over many years, like the dirt tax, just sort of, which was, by the way, a levy. It was a provisional tax put in, at the time. What is it, 23%? 23, yeah. It was kind of grandfathered in at the time, yeah. So I think, yeah, you can grandfather it in. Would it work? I don't know. I'm not so sure, but yes, I'd like to see it happen, definitely.
Yeah, just I'm kind of curious though, you're suggesting that maybe we've made a mess of regulatory requirement in Ireland.
Yeah.
A lot of the slides you put up, you're talking about subprime crisis. That didn't really happen in Ireland. The subprime
no, it didn't.
We had our own kind of property thing.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Subprime all happened in the States, and elsewhere, where presumably these are the guys that we would be ceding regulatory control to.
No,
they didn't really make much of a better fist of it.
No, they didn't. They didn't. Absolutely not. But they were not only did not make a better fist of it, they were worse than us. Actually. Well, because that was kind of about my slide. Who should lend? Well, maybe you shouldn't allow these intermediaries to be lending and so forth. But I don't think necessarily that's a problem for us. I think our problem is not that we have all these financial innovations. Our problem is that we're simply not good at implementing the rules that we've got. I was in Italy last week, and I was talking to 2 Italian bankers, both of whom, well, one of whom was extremely cocky sort of guy. He was like, "You Irish," he was so happy that the economy had imploded because he wasn't getting beaten over the head every day with how great we were, and he was like, "Oh, this is great. The subprime thing, it didn't happen with us. We don't take that kind of financial crap in our system." And the Italian banking system, he's right. The Italian banking system has not been affected one whit. However, later on, about 2 bottles of wine later, his friend, in vino veritas, his friend decided, actually, the reason we didn't get into those subprime financially complex products is because there's simply no expertise in our banking system, and even if we did, the regulations and the rules are just so cumbersome that we literally couldn't get through it. Anybody who's been on a train in Italy knows that there's some regulations there that simply don't make a lot of sense, but they're untouched by it.
Yeah.
Now, through incompetence, not through financial wizardry, but because the regulatory system is so tight, so moribund, that they actually couldn't let themselves get into those markets, which meant, if you're not in, you can't win, but if you're not in, you can't lose either.
Yeah. Well, I kind of think that the governance debate, there's obviously a lot of, I suppose, everybody sort of signing up to this view that we didn't have enough regulation. Maybe the regulation that we had wasn't severe enough or whatever in the last few years. And I just wondered sometimes if people looked at it from the other perspective, which is, maybe we had lots of regulation. Maybe regulation actually encouraged and built into what happened a lot of the incentives that created the mess. So, you see banks, for example, lending, buying this subprime paper.
Yeah.
And they buy the subprime paper because it comes with this AAA rating attached to it.
Yeah.
So some smart guys engineered a situation where a loan being made, for example, finance a trailer park in the States, is dressed up into AAA paper, and it's bought. Now, why is it bought by somebody? Because it's got AAA, and they don't really read the rest of it and figure that actually the paper isn't, the money's going to end up in a trailer park, and it's going to be lent to people who basically can't pay the money back.
Sure.
Well, the reason is because they're only allowed to buy AAA paper. And because it comes with a sort of, this is okay, box tick to it. They don't bother having their own credit analysis. They don't delve into it properly. And even if they did, if they were able to go out and find something which was a proper loan, if you like, but maybe wasn't rated, they wouldn't be allowed to buy it.
Okay, so, I see your point.
I don't think it's as simple as saying the regulators were asleep or that we didn't enforce the rules. I think the way regulation and business interacts is extraordinarily dynamic. If you sort of go back, remember years ago looking at we talked about the problem with monopolies. How do you regulate a monopoly? It's virtually impossible. You look at a monopoly and you think this produces all kinds of perverse results. And regulation, there should be some way of sorting it all out. But then as soon as the regulators get involved, the whole thing becomes
huge.
A big game, and the regulators are usually not equipped to deal with it, and even if they are,
I don't know.
It's extraordinarily difficult to work out any rules. I just think it's not as simple as...
No, I agree. I absolutely agree with you. I think not only is it not as simple, it's probably more complex than even you've talked about. But I guess there is no way to stop stop someone from making a bad decision. If what they're looking at is two AAAs, what they're going to look at, AAA is telling you something about the risk, they're going to look at something in regard to the return, they're going to take a punt. The fact that they didn't do their own credit analysis is a symptom, not of the regulator, if you like, but of the type of financial products they're making. But I think where you would be right is if they really wanted to buy, a BB stock, and they weren't allowed, and the BB stock turned out to be brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, that's your.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I work. Most of us, I suppose, guys work with asset management, and I see this sort of thing a lot. You create these structures that are only allowed to buy certain things.
Sure.
And people want to buy something, so they either manufacture it so it falls into the criteria, or they buy things that actually they shouldn't really be buying, but because they can't buy anything better.
Sure. Yeah.
They buy the stuff. This is sort of I'm only allowed to.
I see your point.
Buy purple cars, so every car I buy is purple, whether I need it or not. It's kind of pointless. But the other thing that I think tends to happen as well, and it's maybe it's an extreme point of view. I don't think anybody would really sign up to it, but there's another argument, which is the well, let the banks fail argument, if you like.
I'm not a fan of that.
No, but nobody is. But there is an argument where if you sort of take away the regulatory cushion, the sense that if we fall over, somebody's got to fix the rules for us, or somebody's going to stop us making the really bad mistakes.
Sure.
Then we don't have to really take too much care.
Yeah, I mean that is Minsky's point actually.
And
that they are always. In fact, the phrase he uses are that financial innovations are actually legitimated and institutionalized by the big bank, by the big government, by virtue of the fact that they buy the assets off these guys. And it happened in the 80s, and it happened in the 90s, and it's going to happen again. They buy the assets off these guys. The same guys stay in power. The same structures happen. Bottoms are smacked, wrists are smacked, and then sort of 5 years later, it all happens again. I certainly think that's part of the cycle.
Yeah. The guys I've come across that never do this sort of stuff are guys who look at their textbooks and say, we don't care, we're allowed to do this stuff, we're just going to be very conservative and very boring, we accept it to be very boring, and they do it because they don't want to. It's because of conscious choice on their business model, because they're aware of what can happen, and they're not expecting somebody to pick up pieces when it falls over.
Sure.
So maybe we should be actually going the other way and saying to people, well, if you want to make a mistake, fine, you bear the consequences, and that'll be pretty horrendous because nobody's going to.
But the person that you turn around and said it to is Lehman Brothers. And they go, well, if we go, you're all coming with us. That's the problem. It's the J.D. Rockefeller thing. I owe you $1 million, you owe me. I owe you $100 million, I owe you.
But then, again, just wondering what your kind of blueprint thinking is.
Sure.
We have this problem too big to fail. Why don't we put in place new structures where no one is too big to fail?
Well, then you would be accused of being anti-competitive.
It doesn't matter what you can accuse of. I'm just saying, is that not a blueprint?
It could be. I think you can even go away from that argument and just say, look, why don't we just take something that will always run? We can call it simple bank. This is all we do. We do small little trades. We don't get involved in any of that stuff. We agree that we're only going to lend out what we've got. We can't really go bang. It seems like a simpler way to do it. And if they grow, then great.
Isn't having a system? The reason we need all this regulation is because everybody, every bank knows that it can't fail, it can't be allowed to fail, and you don't get competition in the true sense. Whereas if you can create a blueprint where every financial institution knows that if they screw up, they're gone. Brian Goggin, if he screwed up, he wouldn't have got paid because the money simply wouldn't be there. Isn't that a better? Isn't there something to go for there?
You would need 1 or 2 or maybe even 3 disciplining periods, if you like, where the banker really learns that, oh my God, these guys are serious. And in those 3 periods, you had an incredibly difficult economic time. I think there's a certain sort of puritanical streak in me that would love to see these guys, in irons for some of the decisions that they make. But practically speaking, if you did that, if you allowed AIB and Bank of Ireland to fail tomorrow on the basis of, lads, this is going to teach you a lesson, you're really cutting off your entire face despite your face, really. I think the downside of that is far bigger than the upside.
But doesn't that come back to, I'll probably challenge the argument that the regulators here were probably equivalent or the only comparables I would say are the Icelandic, because basically